first time I met then, I was then imprisoned in 1977, and um, spent 6 months in the Crum, and then was a year in the blocks on remand. And I got to see Bobby at that time. We had known of each other. We didn't know each other, but we've known who each other was at that time. And at that stage, when the blanket men used to come out, when we were on remand in the blocks, and we had our own clothes, and the blanket men used to come out, and there was always a kind of a hush about them. They were unkempt, they were smelly. They had to wear the prison uniform to get a visit, and some of them deliberately made the prison uniform even more unkempt and more ridiculous than it was. They'd have put on shirts that were much too big for them, or trousers that were much too big, and boots, and they wouldn't have tied up the laces, just as a statement to say, well, you're making me wear this, but I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me. But Bobby was the opposite. Bobby had the collar outside the coat, like John Travolta style, like 19, but it was a touch of feisting about him. And this is in 1978. And the first thing it struck you was, I mean, he was always in control of the situation. He was around talking to people, giving people pep talks. I mean, passing information on to different people in different blocks, and doing the business. So there was there was absolutely no. This is a guy who was marked out as had absolute leadership qualities. There was no doubt about it, and was in no way unbowed by his circumstances. So that was my first memory of him, really seeing him at those times. I came at a time when the leadership of the blanket protest had been taken out of the different blocks and had been put into H6 as a way of controlling, as a way of the prison authorities controlling the protest and trying to break the resolve of the majority of the prisoners, most of whom were very young. Things were pretty dire. I mean, it was a brutal regime. People had a lot of young people, and people were down in their boots, really. This had just followed with the forced wives in 1978. There was a particularly brutal prison officer in charge of H3 at that time, who was later shot dead, who initiated a regime of constant intimidation and violence, and people were just hanging on. A lot of people were just hanging on at this stage. There was there was very little activity within the wing at that time. There were very little. People might have said a rosary and Irish night. There was some Irish language activities. There was Irish language classes. That's where I first really used that time to hone my Irish language, my knowledge of the Irish language and skills. Now that changed for me in around September 1979, whenever whatever happened within the prisons, they then dispersed the leaders from the H6 block back and around the rest of the wings. And from my point of view, that had an immediate impact. There was no sense of the collective at that stage. I think everybody was just behind their doors doing their, trying to put their time in. But Bobby really changed that. I mean, he created. There was much more of a culture within the wing. He then started his storytelling. There were political lectures going ahead. At that time we were very, very interested in the Nicaraguan revolution, about the Sandinistas. We were getting smuggled copies of the Republican news, and we were talking about how people were talking about the long war, the struggle, how it could be carried on, what the mistakes were to date, stuff like that. The whole issue of political status. So it was a very instructive, a very challenging time, and it was very enlightening for a lot of people. And it's where a lot of people grew up and and really sharpened their awareness of what for most people they had just kind of staggered into without a whole lot of thought. We were from areas that were convulsed in 1969, and I mean a lot of us really just followed through. I mean it would have been I suppose it would have been a unusual if you hadn't been involved in the struggle. I mean, given the background we were in, so there was much more thought given to how we had arrived at that moment in time, and how we were going to try and plot our way out of it. And Bobby was really it was to the fore at that, and his creativity was amazing, really, for someone. And I've always found that for someone who his Irish was pretty good. I mean, Bobby was he was a Renaissance man in the sense that he was a good singer. I found out later he was a decent, he was a pretty good footballer. He had a bit of a Rod Stewart type of voice, with rough edges. It was probably to do with the cigarettes made with the toilet roll, which I'm sure was enough to irritate anybody's throat. So he was good. He was a good Irish speaker. He was extremely creative, and he had so much energy. Like, I mean, there was at that time there wasn't. Whenever there was a break, or whenever the prison officers went away after lunch or something like that, and there was. He was down writing. If it wasn't writing columns outside, it was writing creative stuff. It was writing poems, and the fact that he could, he was like a magpie, taking pieces from here and there. And I remember when they weren't long on the wing, and we were just after a wing move. And then for a wing move, you had to wait maybe a couple of hours, depending on what the attitude of the prison officers were, till you got your blanket back in your mattress. So you were with that. You were in the cell with just like a tea towel around you. So it was just a matter of walking up and down to keep yourself warm. I remember hearing across the way, hearing Bobby singing what I thought was the Gordon Lightfoot's on the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and he was, trying to take different pieces of it. And I kind of said to him that night, do you know the meaning on the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? And he kind of jumped, and he says, no, do you know that? But really, what it was he was working together the Back Home in Derry song. So that's the type of person that he was. I mean, the rest of us, I certainly wasn't as energetic as that, but I can't remember a time whenever he wasn't doing something that he felt was being positive and trying to encourage our people to do the same. So there's no mythology about it. The guy had absolute leadership qualities, and Bobby was very much behind the choreography of how the first hunger strike was presented, which really was done on the same lines as the seven signatories of the proclamation, the seven hunger strikers. So it started, and I remember at the time, thinking back on it, there was a lot of internal jubilations, and probably the wrong word, but there was a lot of people were feeling this is finally going to resolve it, and there was an expectation that the momentum would be unstoppable and couldn't be resisted. And there was definitely a feeling of confidence about it. And of course, whenever the hunger strike came to an end, there was people were trying to comprehend. I mean, what had happened. I think there was a feeling of disbelief initially, and there was confusion about how the hunger strike had ended, and how we were going to take this forward. And I think, I mean, a lot of people who were there who were in the depths of despair, people who had been on the protest for over 4 years at that stage, and felt really that this was, a disaster had happened, that we'd played our major card, and we still hadn't achieved the 5 demands or our political status. Bobby Sands tried his best, I think, and it was clear that within that he tried all that he could to try and establish if there was any grounds for progressing based on that document, based on the civilian issue clothing and the free association. And part of that, I remember then we ended the no wice protest. We wised, and we then were given, agreed to the end of the no wice, and we were given, we were allowed toilet facilities, and we were brought into new cells, and we had furniture and stuff like that. And that was the start. We then sent out for our clothes. And I mean, it's clear in retrospect that the prison authorities probably even at that level, that if they had have shown some sort of willingness to engage with the president, that the issue really could have been resolved. I'm fairly confident that, and I would say that shows. Once for all, Bobby Sands really felt, whenever that got through back in our faces, that there was no other option. Really, it was either that or give in. And that's when the inevitability of the second hunger strike really took hold, that it became clear in Bobby Sands' mind that these people didn't want any flexibility, didn't want to leave any room for compromise. What they wanted to do was to win and to say, look, you're going to conform to prison rules, and all that entailed in terms of the what that meant for the for the struggle, that it was being criminalised. So I think it became clear then that there was that he felt that there was no way out, that there would have to be a hunger strike, and that someone would have to die before there would be a resolution. And I kind of sensed a sort of, not a coldness, but there was a fixed sense of purpose. I mean, I also said that Bobby was a sort of chameleon, that he could talk about music to someone, that he could talk about football to someone else. And then he could be, extremely political, talking to someone who was discussing left wing politics, or the ins and outs of Marxism. But at that stage, just prior to to the second hunger strike, there was a kind of steeliness that came through, and there was, he became much more fixed purpose, I felt. Looking back in retrospect, and then the preparations were then been put in hand for the second hunger strike. Bobby's birthday, I think, is about the 8th of March. Mine, I remember because my own is the 10th of March, and we had a concert. I think it was on the Sunday night prior to the beginning of the hunger strike, which was really us saying our kind of farewells. I think we all knew it was very emotional, and everyone knew who was there at that time that what was happening, that there was going to be no coming back from this. The hunger strike started on the 1st of March, and we then gave up the no wice protest, which again showed the kind of the strategy. I think Bobby was behind it and realised that the there was no point in going on with something that didn't have any effectiveness in terms of the no wise protest was effective in its time, but whenever the hunger strike then emerged, that the no wise protest was just was no longer an issue. So we started washing and cleaning out our cells. At that time, then I was in the cell next to Bobby. Bobby's in the first cell. I'm not sure. Cell 26 was used to call the Killeen Moor, the big cell. I think Bobby then was in the next cell to it at the start of the wing, for ease of medical staff and stuff like that. And he began his hunger strike. And for to my own shame, I can't remember if I was in the cell with someone or if I was on my own. I know I had been, prior to the end of the first hunger strike, I had been in the cell with Tom McElwee. And Tom was still in the wing. Bobby began the hunger strike, and I would have went into the cell and cleaned the cell out, mopped it out, and brushed it, and changed his water, the water, and kind of did whatever, and prolonged it as much as I can to keep talking to him and stuff like that, make sure he was making sure that he was warm, and whatever needs he had were attended to. Went to there was a routine of going out to the medical office every day, and they were taking his weight down, and every day it had been shouting down what the weight was and what the weight loss was from that day and stuff like that. Bobby was very, when he was very matter of fact when he was giving these facts, as if he was talking about someone else, and describing the weight loss of the day. And at night then, when Bobby, when he had a chance, then he was writing his diary, and he either would have given me the diary if possible, if there hadn't been any prison officers about. I'd have got his page for that day and kept it, or else he at night time, if he was working at night and he had completed the page, he would have put it through the pipe to me in the next cell, and I would have held it and kept it to give to Bick or whatever to ensure it was to go, whoever had a visit that next day, so to ensure that it was to go out. So I knew that I was kind of playing a part, and kind of holding the coat of a great man, if you like. I remember Bobby leaving the wing and taking his leave and saying to everybody when he was going down to the prison hospital. But during that time, I spoke at night to him to try and keep him occupied, and he had a smoke, and we were talking about various things. But Bobby was always in control of the conversation, and there was never any any doubt that entered into his conversation, but that he was in the final weeks of his life, he didn't think there was any possibility that this thing could be resolved with another last minute intervention. He spoke about what stuff that he would have liked to have done and stuff like that, but there was no question on what he was doing. Absolutely no question on what. The guy was 100% convinced that he was doing the only thing that he felt that he could do. He felt a responsibility. There's no doubt about it, that he felt a responsibility for the people who he had led, on that protest over the years, and there was no doubt that he felt that he was doing what he was doing. He felt that he was doing it as a volunteer of the IRA. I don't think there's any two ways about that. The issue, the prison struggle, in Bobby Sands' mind was always the secondary issue to how it was going to progress the struggle for United Ireland. There's absolutely no question about that in my mind. The election, I'm trying to think who, someone in the wing had the, who was it, had the radio, the Maggie Taggart, they call Maggie Taggart, that was the downtown radio presenter. And so someone had the crystal radio. They used to pass it around, and when we got told then that you have to keep it down, that we're still waiting on the election results for Bobby standing, and we were passing up the wing end, but Bobby getting elected, and then somewhere, I think it was maybe H4, someone heard a massive cheer from another block or something like that, and and then really that just broke the dam, and everybody and just erupted in a crazy cheer, and the prison officers must have realised they were having some way of getting information from that time. So it just it punctured that. It would give us renewed hope that really that this thing was irresistible, that it couldn't. That they had to listen to their demands. That there was too much pressure, and that to say that we were, you mean that we were criminals or that we had no support, had been well and truly punctured. When we knew that it was in it's in its final hours, and we just got the story. I think Bick was going down to the hospital, and the hospital wing, and coming back, and we knew really that he was very, very weak, and I'm not sure. I think it was Bick told us that Bobby had passed away on the 5th of the 5th, and it was just it was an emptiness. Down that wing, down those wings. Sometimes you go down, but this was this kind of, there was a difference. There was an airiness. There was just an air of despair. We had become, we'd become sort of. We knew there was inevitability about it, but whenever it happened, it just, that people really were distraught, and and they were alone with their own thoughts. I suppose there were people. There's a sense of guilt. There's a sense of guilt that we knew that he was, that he was doing it on our behalf. That we were gonna, if there was going to be anything, we would benefit from it. And I think everybody was wrestling with their own inner feelings. But we knew that the person we'd seen had been. You don't meet many people like that. You don't meet. You're extremely lucky if you meet, exceptional people like that come by in your life. And I think we all knew that on our journey in life that we'd met, a number of people, but especially him, who was, an exceptional person who really stood out. Who came, who circumstances brought out. Those qualities that he had. I felt an emptiness, but then shortly after that, you were thinking about how the rest of them. You were then focusing on how the rest of them could progress. Everyone who was a player or a participant in 1981 felt that sense of loss every single time, and the sense of despair whenever the hunger strikers died, one by one, and it didn't lessen, and the impact was just as great from the first one to the last one. think there's no doubt about it that the present struggle, if it hadn't been for 1981, would have went the same way as the rest of the armed struggles since the end of partition. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think that 1981 was the year that that we kept talking about the need for a mass struggle without actually. I don't think we actually knew what that meant, and the hunger strike then, and the way that people rallied around that and galvanized support for the demands of the prisoners on a progressive issue showed the way forward. I mean that there needed to be, that we needed to move away from from being elitist. That it was a matter of engaging with as many groups and broad fronts as possible, as long as it was done under the right terms, which was leading towards a united Ireland, a democratic social solution to this country. So, in terms of the legacy, I don't think there's any doubt about that the where we're at now, the follow up the Good Friday Agreement and the resolution since that, the end of the armed struggle, I don't think it would have happened. I think we would have been. I think the Republican movement would have ended. It would have fizzled out the way everything else did. Now that's not to say that we, looking back, be dishonest to say it in 1981 that we could have foreseen, where we would be today. We would have hoped that we'd been a united Ireland, but we're still involved in a struggle that hasn't reached its conclusion yet. But people seem to forget that in every armed conflict since partition, Republicans set out an armed struggle and ended up in a weaker position than when they had started out in. And this is the one time that we're in a much stronger position, and we're still moving in the same direction of travel, which is towards United Ireland. And I think that the lessons are there from 1916 as well. That one can argue about, and people do, about how worthwhile it was. But it took people of the caliber of Tom Clark and Pearson Connolly to galvanise public opinion, around the goal, and to realise that they needed to act together and collaborate, and that we could shape our own destiny. And I think Bobby Sands, the Frank Hughes, the Tom McElwees, the Patsy O'Hara's, these are people who are of the same caliber. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're people who will be remembered as long as Irish Republicans spoken about, as long as Ireland's spoken about. People like these will be remembered for being the heroes they are.